Good afternoon, everyone. Allison Schaberg here at Consolidated Planning Group. We are happy to be here with you guys today. Thanks for taking the time to join us. This is going to be a very informative webinar where I'm going to dive into understanding the Social Security Administration. That's a mouthful in itself. There's so many programs and it is so confusing for so many. And understanding the benefits of establishing a special needs trust. We are back together here with Gigit, Tyler, and Carly Maderer with Tyler and Maderer Law Firm. And so they're going to be taking a deep dive into these topics today. We are in webinar mode, which means that we can't see you or hear you, but we know you're here. We're glad that you've joined us today. We do invite you to put your questions in the chat box. We have many people registered for today. It is possible that we will not be able to get to all the questions today, but we're going to do our very best in the time that we have together. If you're planning your lunch hour, we're going for an hour today. This webinar is being recorded. Everybody is going to get a copy of the slides and a link to the recording after the fact. And all of our past recordings live on the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to for free. There are hundreds of webinars on various topics out there, so you can check that out. Consolidated Planning Group, we are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We're the money, they're the paper, they're the legal documents, Tyler and Maderer. So we don't do the legal documents, they don't do the financial planning that we do. People come to us because they want to plan for the future of their loved one with a disability. They want to know how much money to fund a special needs trust, who's going to care for their child when they're gone, how and when to apply for public benefits, and what other programs might be available. We are nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy, chartered special needs consultants, and we stand ready to plan with you for the future. I myself am a parent to multiple kids, adult kids with disabilities, so we definitely eat, sleep, and breathe this. We help people put protection plans in place, lifetime care plans. We do a lot of transition planning. We help establish and fund ABLE accounts, and we do a lot of advocacy by way of these webinars and education. We hope to empower you by these webinars and give you some of the tools and resources that you need to feel successful when you're on your planning journey with your loved one. So one thing that we always like to mention, we think is very important, whether you work with us or you work with them, or work with somebody else, we do think it's very important that you work with a specialist that is specifically nuanced with individuals with disabilities. It is complicated. You're not wrong if you have felt overwhelmed or felt like all this stuff that you kind of dip your toe in is really complicated. It absolutely is, and it is critically important to have money in the right buckets, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So having said that, we are going to get started, and I'm going to turn it over to the two of you. Thank you again for joining us. I'm so glad that you're back with us.
All right. Hi, I'm Gigit Tyler, and I'm going to go first, and I'm going to talk about the Social Security Administration, and then Carly Maderer will take over with the special needs planning and the trust and all those good things. So we can go to the next slide. All right. So when you talk about disability programs with the Social Security Administration, there are two different programs that exist. There is Social Security Disability, which is all about how much taxes you paid in over your work life. And then there's Supplemental Security Income, which is going to be based more on your income and assets you currently have. For both programs, you first have to prove you're disabled. The disability definition is the same for both programs. However, it is different for adults and for children. For adults, it is all about your ability to work. So when people come to me, if they're 18, we're trying to prove that there's not a full-time job they can do at a substantial gainful activity level, which this year is around $1,600 a month. So I'm trying to prove that they can't do that. For a child, it's based on how they compare to children their age. So we look at different, like their ability to communicate with people, take care of themselves, use their hands, and we compare that to a child, if you have an 8-year-old, what's different about them? And that's how you get on disability as a child. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so just a little bit more about the Social Security Disability Program. So after we prove that you are disabled, then we have to look at what are the other things that you need. It's all about the taxes you've paid in, and these slides aren't updated for 2025, but you need to generally have worked 10 or 5 out of the last 10 years. Unless you're under the age of 32, there's a little less there. So for this year, every $1,810 that you pay in, through W-2 taxes, you get 1/4 or 1 point for that year, and you're allowed to get at least 4 points a year. So if you're disabled and you have paid in enough taxes, then you can qualify for Social Security disability. This year, the max you can get is $4,018 per month. Of course, it's going to be based on what your salary was before you became disabled, and you'll also get Medicare, is the insurance that you become eligible for after you've been entitled to benefits for at least 24 months. We can go to the next slide. Okay, and that's just kind of what I was talking about as far as the credit. So you need, so many credits in the past year. So I always simplify this as 5 out of the last 10 years you need to have worked. You can go to the next slide.
Can we talk about what criteria you need to prove? Someone just asked if, can we talk about the criteria to prove disability?
Right. So there's lots of things that we generally use to prove someone's disabled. Again, we're trying to prove for an adult that they can't work. And so we look at medical evidence. I always tell my clients at this point, whatever you're telling your doctor, you're telling Social Security. So we pull all those medical records. We also send forms out to doctors to have them complete them that show the restrictions. I generally will get letters from family members, loved ones who can talk about the disabilities and things they've witnessed. Sometimes if the person has worked before, then I am getting letters from past employers to show what struggles they had or what additional accommodations they needed. And those are all things that I put, into Social Security. Of course, it's hard to give specific advice because every disability is different. So I'm looking at different types of evidence. But the most important thing is medical. You have to have medical records to show what's going on. All right, so we were just talking about Social Security disability. Now, there is one way to get Social Security disability, even if you have not worked and paid in, and that's under the Adult Disabled Child Benefit. That is only eligible for people who are disabled before the age of 22, and one of their parents has to either be receiving Social Security benefits or if they are deceased. Either one of those they can draw off of their parents' Social Security. So often I get someone on SSI, and then as their parents get older, we will switch them to being on Social Security disability. We often do that because, again, this is based on taxes and it's not based on income and assets. Okay, we can go to the next slide.
I just wanted to say for a moment, when we're throwing around the word Social Security and SSDI, so they could be getting Social Security disability, Social Security, or be deceased in that way, because I think it's one of the things that I think makes things confusing is all the acronyms that the Social Security Administration throws around, and some don't sound the same at all, but they are the same, and vice versa. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is that sometimes people, if they were already getting Social Security and the minor child or children are getting, benefits under the parents' record simply because they're a minor, that the importance of reapplying once that disabled child turns 18, because it's not just going to automatically continue on in those cases. So a lot of times people don't know that. And with the amount of time that these applications are taking to process, I mean, it could be more than a year where the benefits stop before they're restarted. So I just wanted to mention that for anybody that's disabled child is getting benefits under age 18, that there's some steps on that.
Yes, and those are, survivor benefits or retirement benefits, which I'm just covering disability, but yes, that is true. If you have someone who is getting benefits because they're a minor, it is a completely different program, even though it feels the same because you're getting a check from Social Security, but that is not the same as an adult disabled child benefit. All right, and so the other disability program that we're talking about today is SSI, which, you know, if you have a child who's been disabled since birth, this is generally the program we're going to apply for at 18. The max benefit you can get from it this year is $967. And this comes with Medicaid, not Medicare. And so Medicaid, there's not the waiting period, which is nice. So you don't have that 24-month waiting period. So they automatically get insurance. Some states do actually give you an extra amount of money, but if you live in Texas, we just get what the federal amount, which is the $967. You can go to the next slide. So as far as the additional requirements for SSI, after you prove that they are disabled, there are some just non-financial requirements. Like for the most part, you have to be a citizen. You can't live out of the country and get these benefits. So there are just some legal things that you have to be a citizen, not on, you know, not a felon, not on parole or anything like that to get these benefits. You can go to the next slide. All right, so the thing that really impacts people the most or makes it difficult for them to get on SSI is actually not the medically disabled test, but the resource test and the income test. So you have to pass each of those in addition to becoming disabled before you can receive the benefits. So when we're looking at a resource test, if you are an individual not married, you can have $2,000 in non-exempt assets. And we'll kind of talk about, I think there's a slide about non-exempt assets. You get a house, you can have one vehicle, but like cash in a bank account, retirement accounts, annuities, a lot of those, you know, that's all going to count against you. So that needs to be under $2,000 for an individual. If you're married, you do get $3,000. And it's a snapshot test. So the first day on the month, they look at what your resources are to see if you would qualify on for SSI for that month.
We have a couple of questions. One person was asking about SSDI seems to be restricted to a family maximum, even where mother and father retired drawing Social Security over age 75, but the child is not getting 50%.
Correct. That's what it's up to, because there is a family maximum, and Social Security disability is very much based on how much you've paid in and what the family maximum is. So it's unfortunately there are times, depending on who's all drawn off of a record, that there's no additional money to go to the disabled child. Now that can always change if someone comes off the record. Then you can reapply for those benefits to start getting them.
One person said, so if we don't have a lawyer to represent us, do we have to submit all the proof and documentation directly? And the answer is yes. There are lawyers like their firm that can help with this, and there are other service providers that may run point. Like I have clients that are busy surgeons or busy professions to where they couldn't necessarily be available for phone calls and interviews and other things like at the drop of a hat. So a lot of times people hire that out depending on your your availability. And then I would just like to say that I am a huge fan. I do think it's possible for people to do it themselves if they have the time to do it. You can absolutely do it, but you start getting denials, then I think that's where you really want to get a professional on your side. And I commonly refer to Gigit here, because Gigit does a great job on that, on running down those appeals. Denials are common. I tell people they should expect to get denied, and if they don't, then do a happy dance. Denials are a very common thing, but my opinion is if you do get denied, you really should consider hiring a professional and getting a professional on your side to attack that appeal. Do you want to comment on that, Gigit?
Yeah, normally what I tell people when I get that question is, I think it is completely fine to do the application on your own the first go around. If you get denied though, that first denial, the reconsideration, the appeal step has like an 89% denial rate. So if you get denied the first time, you're most likely getting denied the second time. And then the next step is going to see the judge. The reason why I really like to have people at that reconsideration level is because it gives me more time to build evidence in the case. So the longer an attorney is looking in the file and able to see what's going on, the more evidence and advice we can give you. If you come to me and you've already put in the hearing request and a hearing is scheduled in 2 months, I'm very limited on what I can do. I will go to the hearing with you. I will, get all the things and talk about the judge, what the disabilities are, but I don't have time to build up medical evidence. And these cases are 90% evidence. So, I have a lot of people like, well, I'm just going to tell them I can't do this and I can't, it doesn't matter if there's no evidence to back it up. So yes, the initial application stage, I feel very comfortable with people trying that on their own. Now, sometimes, like what Allison said, if you're really busy, it is paperwork intensive and there are deadlines. So as long as you have the capacity to do that, that is completely fine. But if you get denied, I would really suggest that you talk to an attorney.
Couple other questions. One person says, can my daughter lose her Medicaid benefits because of SSDI and she is 21? The answer is she will likely lose that Medicaid benefit that comes along with SSI, but she is a mandatory Medicaid group. So in Texas, I've seen it work the way it's supposed to work about twice last year. So for the most part, when people switched over to the SSDI, they got a letter that they were denied for Medicaid, and that was the SSI Medicaid. But what the letter doesn't say typically is that you need to go to Health and Human Services and apply for Medicaid, and that the individual who was getting Medicaid first is a mandatory Medicaid group. So technically they may lose it on paper, but you just need to reapply. It's not working as smoothly in Texas as it should. Can we use SSI funds to pay for food?
Yes, you can use your SSI funds for anything as long as it's for the disabled person. You can go on a vacation, food, shelter. There's no limitations on what the SSI money can be spent on.
So this is a good one, and it doesn't normally come up. If an adult child has a life insurance policy, if the policy owner and beneficiary is the parent, will it affect the SSI? The answer is no. But that is why it's so critically important. If you have a permanent life insurance policy on your child when they turn 18, you do need to do a change of ownership to make a parent or someone other than them the owner, because if they are the owner, the cash value in the life insurance will count as an asset. So that's a really good one, and it does not come up very often. I think we talked about this, the Medicaid guidelines. What is the max amount of money can a person have and not be penalized?
Yeah, for individual it's 2,000. For a married couple, it's 3,000.
Okay. We applied for my son who is autistic. We had an interview with a clinical psychologist 2 weeks ago, and he's already 19 years old now.
I think she's asking if the benefits will start at 18. It's going to depend on when you applied. I think that's what it's asking. With SSI applications, the earliest they can pay you is a month after you applied. It works differently than Social Security Disability. So depending on when you applied is going to depend on when his benefits can get paid back to. And if that's not the question, you can put it in there, but I feel like that's what it's asking.
Okay. One person says looking at drawing Social Security early, and I know my daughter's SSI will switch to SSDI. What is the term that you use and what do I need to do again? And I'm going to let you answer that, but I want to say that we do suggest an analysis. We have an analysis that takes into consideration a disabled adult child, and it tells us right down to the month and year what may be the most effective way to pull the trigger on your benefits to maximize benefits for yourself, your spouse, and your disabled child. And we do suggest looking at that before pulling the trigger. But why don't you comment on what she needs to do as far as applying for childhood disability benefits?
Right. So for that specific program, you're going to really have two options. You can call your local Social Security office and set an appointment, and they'll do it with you online. And if your child is already on SSI, you should not need a lawyer to do that. It should be very much you call them and you do the application process with them. And I say should because I would say a handful every year where someone's on SSI and they get denied the adult disabled child benefit saying they're not disabled, and then you have to hire an attorney. But the other way is to start with an attorney from the beginning, and we can do a paper application and submit it. But again, I don't feel like you need to pay attorney's fees in those cases. I would just contact your local Social Security office and start that process. What should also happen is it should ask you on your retirement application, if you have a child, a disabled child, you should put yes, and it should trigger the application process, but lately it doesn't always do that. So just once you get on the retirement benefits, I would call your local Social Security office.
Okay, a couple more and then we're gonna keep moving and we'll come back to some questions. If one parent is working and one is not, can the parent who is not working apply for the child SSI, SSDI?
The parent who is not working. So as long as they're on social, you just have to have a parent who's on Social Security benefits. It doesn't matter about the other parent. So as long as one is receiving benefits, then they can apply for the program.
One thing I want to mention with that, because I think it is important, is that when we're talking about a child drawing off of a parent's record and 50%, like whoever turns theirs on first, then the child can go under the childhood disability benefits. But later, if the other parent turns their benefits on and their benefit is higher, you can request that the child be switched to the other record for the higher benefit. But I just like to mention that that is not automatic. It just doesn't just happen. You're going to have to mention that you need that to happen. Okay, someone says, I called in August to report that the parent has moved into my home after I've been the caregiver for 10 years for my granddaughter and receiving SSI payments. Monthly payment has not changed. What more should I do?
Is the parent, well, this is a very fact specific question, so it's hard. If the parent is working and now living with the child, that income, if the child is under 18, needs to be reported. So I don't know if that's happened. Also, sometimes Social Security, it takes them a long time to realize they haven't cut off benefits. So I would really suggest you call them again and say, hey, especially if the parent is working, because that's the issue. If the parent is working and getting money, just like, hey, I called and I told you, that they are living here now and this is the source of income coming in. Are the benefits correct? And just know that sometimes Social Security does not move as fast as they should as far as cutting off benefits, and then they want it returned. But that's I would have to have way more information to give specific advice on that, but I would reach back out to them if she's working or he or she is working.
Okay, for a rent agreement, you can download one from online. You can create one on Word. It's very simple as far as a rent agreement. Can we deduct utilities apart from rent? Yeah, you can lump it all in together. You can deduct however you see fit on there. How far back retroactive can I collect rent from a son once he's approved?
A lot of times what we're doing is soon, it depends on what he's turned 18, we go ahead and do a rental agreement and loan agreement to the parent saying, hey, I'm loaning him, like, let's say the rent is $450 a month, but I also do a loan agreement saying that, okay, I'm giving him $450 a month to pay this. And so then once they get approved, you can backdate it to all of the dates that those documents were done.
Okay, we have somebody in the chat box that says that their child is autistic but will likely work, but it does have some other issues that they're concerning, wondering if we should apply. I feel like the answer is yes, you should apply. Establish that the disability began prior to age 22. If they can work, there are all kinds of programs with the Social Security Administration, 5 phases of work for them to dip their toe in to see if they actually can work. So it's not like, all or nothing with that. So I'm a fan of getting it, proving that the disability did exist prior to 22. What do you think about that, Gidget?
Yes, I say you apply for that reason, and also the process is so very slow. If they start working full time, you can always stop benefits or withdraw the application. But if you wait 3 years and they never end up being able to work, you can't make up that time. You're still going to start at the very beginning of the process, and it's just such a long process. I would say start it.
Okay, and then for anybody that's getting SSI less than the 967 a month for 2025, then that tells us that you do need a rent agreement in place, and your SSI, if the child isn't working, of course, it's reduced for their working, but it's reduced by 1/3 if you don't have a rent agreement in place. And you could really choose any amount. They changed that last year, so you could say they're paying you $350 a month. I see a lot of people use the number of $500 or $600 a month. But once you submit that rent agreement, once they process that, then they will increase that amount to the 967, to the full amount, per month. And that's going up to 994 for 2026.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna keep going for now, okay?
Okay, and we've kind of touched on this, but the types of income when they're looking at the income limits, there's unearned income and there's earned income. So unearned income could be like inheritance, which is a big one people get into trouble with, gifts, anything where you're not out there working to make the money. You get $20 of that for free, but after that first $20, it's a dollar for dollar offset. So if you were given $120 in gift, then your benefit is going to be reduced by $100 for that month. And then the other one is earned income. So, if you're trying to work and you have wages, self-employment, you get the first $65 for free. And then after that, for every $2, you get $1 reduced. So if you made $265, you're going to get only $100 reduced for earned income. We can go to the next slide. All right, and then the other two types of income, which is kind of what we were just talking about, is the in-kind support and maintenance and deemed income. So if you're not paying for food, or food is actually taken out, now you can pay for their food. But as far as clothing, shelter, if you aren't paying for those services, your benefit's going to get reduced by a third. So you want to have that rental agreement and you need to actually pay it. So some people get in trouble because they'll do the rental agreement, but they're not transferring the money every month from the bank account. And Social Security does look at that sometimes. So make sure once you have the rental agreement, once they're getting the income, you're transferring that money to whoever the rental agreement is to. The other one is deemed income. This is really the reason why most children do not qualify for benefits, because the parent's income is deemed to the child. And if we're dealing with a spouse situation, the spouse income will be deemed to the spouse. We can go to the next one. Okay, and that's just more what I was talking about. So that's why most children don't qualify. All right, so the big assets that are exempt, your principal residence, your automobile, just keep in mind you get one per family. So got to be careful with the vehicles. We can go to the next slide. And the other one, household items, personal effects, burial insurance, those kind of things are not going to kick you off of SSI. All right, and I talked about earlier, when you get SSI, you get Medicaid. There's different types of states. Luckily, Texas is one where as long as you're getting $1 SSI, you're going to get Medicaid. So sometimes it's also, we're working with people, if they want to try to work, we make sure they're still getting that $1 of SSI, they still qualify so that they do get the Medicaid. We can go to the next slide. All right, and that's just in case any people were in other states, that just kind of lists the different states and what type of Medicaid eligibility they have. We can go to the next slide. All right, the process of applying for Social Security disability and SSI, you can start the process online. Social Security disability is a fully online process. If you do SSI, you'll put in information, they're going to call and schedule you an appointment, or you have to go through an attorney. That's supposed to be changing. Hopefully it does, so it can be fully online process. Once the local office gets all your information, they're going to send it to Austin, who makes the medical decisions. Unfortunately, that office is very far behind right now. So it's generally taking a year before you get that initial decision on your application. If you are denied, we will do something called a reconsideration. That's going to go back to that same office in Austin. So it says 6 months for a decision. I would say it's still closer to 10 to 12 months currently. They have put in some AI, and so every now and then a case will get picked up faster at the reconsideration level, but I'm just not seeing it consistently enough that I can move that time away from the 10 to 12 month time period. If you get denied there, then the next step is going to have a hearing in front of an ALJ. That can be done by phone, by video, or in person. That does happen faster, only 5 months from when we request that to when we're having the hearing date. Now, if you were to get denied at that hearing level, there's also something called the Appeals Council in Virginia that we can appeal that decision to. And then if you get denied again, you have to go to district court. We actually are filing a lawsuit essentially against Social Security. So those are the steps. I would say, you know, most people, the most common step to get approved is at that hearing level right there, that third step. All right, we can go to the next one. All right, and then this is pretty much where Carly would take over as far as, okay, once you get approved for benefits, you know, what do we do next?
Can we talk about this slide? Okay, I mean, Allison, did you want a few
I think we
questions
have a
more?
few more questions, and
Okay.
I want to give Carly plenty of time. So like assets that are counted, like, you know, we've run into this before, and different states do things differently because Medicaid is state specific. But a 401k or an IRA in the individual's name that has a disability is a countable asset in Texas. In other states, it may not be. I wish that was the way here, but it's not. So for Medicaid purposes, that is a countable asset. Gosh, we have a very active chat box today. So one person said, so if they get approved for SSDI, does that come along with Medicaid?
If they're just applying for Social Security disability, they're going to get Medicare. Now, like we talked about earlier, if it's someone who was on SSI as an adult disabled child and they're switching to their parents, there is a way to keep both in Texas, SSI or Medicaid and Medicare. But for the most part, Social Security disability, Medicare, not Medicaid.
Okay, so Medicare, 24 months after being approved for Social Security disability, SSI comes along with Medicaid. One person says, so when doing my taxes, is it better to claim or not claim my disabled adult child? And I always tell people it doesn't matter. Like it has no relevance. And the other thing that doesn't have any relevance that comes up all the time is if they're under guardianship, will that make them not eligible for SSI, or will the Social Security Administration look at my income even though I have an adult child under guardianship? And that has no relevance either. If I get denied and miss the appeal window, do I have to wait a certain amount of time before filing again?
No.
Okay. And I say pay attention to those letters because they're serious about their deadlines. They're 30 days, they're 60 days, whatever amount of days that they're giving you to get stuff in. They're real serious about that. So read every page. I know sometimes you get them and it's the end of the day and you look at it and you're like, oh, not today. It's like 15 pages or something. But you do need to read about that. And let's talk about child support and SSI and how that works. Can you mention that?
Yes, that will count against them if it's going directly to them. It has to go kind of what Carly's about to go into. The way to avoid that is you have to have a trust, and you have to have a court order from the family court saying that the child support is to be paid to that first party trust. If it's going directly in the child's name, or even even though it's still going to the parent's name, they still will not allow them to get SSI to count against them. So it needs to be filed through trust.
Okay, I've not received any renewal info in the mail to renew Medicaid, even though my child's receiving SSI. Do I need to call them and renew the Medicaid, or is it automatic basically if they're getting SSI?
Yeah, as far as that would be automatic. Normally SSI, you know, you get the questions about the income, or has your income or asset change, that's really the renewal. I mean, as long as you're not getting kicked off of SSI, generally you're not going to be getting kicked off of Medicaid.
And just to mention, there's like 109 Medicaid programs in Texas. So
Yeah, I
just
know.
because you're getting Medicaid under SSI, so which, you know, that's true for SSI, but those other different Medicaid programs do have weird renewals and things like that, and different programs have different rules. So you will want to pay attention to that. Let me see if there is anything else. We'll do the best we can, and then Gidget, maybe you can answer some of the questions in the chat box while Carly's going through hers, because I want to leave her enough time. We'll get back to you guys as much as we can on the questions. We just want to get through this because what Carly has to talk about is equally as important of what we've just talked about so far. So thank you, Carly.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. If you could go back to that one slide, I just want to touch on a couple things. Really, why I like this slide is because I get this question a lot. You know, I am getting Social Security. What do I do? How do I protect it? How do I protect my kids from getting kicked off of it, or, you know, my adult disabled child from getting kicked off if I pass away. I get these questions a lot. And the first thing I have to ask is, I need to know what, you know, program they're on, what type of public benefit they're on, because it is specific and case by case, as Gigit's mentioned. We have to know all the facts. And a lot of the times people don't know which program they're on. They say, oh, for sure I'm on SSI, but they've actually switched over and now they're on SSDI. And so that I approach that estate plan completely differently, or maybe a little bit differently, depending on the family situation. So I like, you know, splitting those two up. For sure, if your disabled child turns 18, they can qualify for SSI, as Gigit mentioned, because now it's their income, you know, and asset and resource limits, not the family, not the parents. It's not being deemed to them anymore. So that's really important to understand. But of course, if, you know, you're just going along wanting to save for your child and you've opened them up an UPMA account or a savings account and it's in their name, and that there could be $30,000 in it, and all of a sudden you're 18 and you're like, oh, and you're not eligible anymore, and you didn't realize that maybe some of those accounts were now considered their, right? It's like their account. Once they're 18, they can have access to it. So that is where I hope to help people plan so that they don't run into that problem when their child turns 18 and is eligible for SSI. So on the next slide, we go into special needs planning. So if you have a child who's been disabled since birth, as I do, that is my daughter Kennedy. She's been in a couple of other slides. She was born with a rare chromosome disorder, and will need full-time care her whole life. So when she was born in 2017, I kind of reevaluated our estate plan, talked to Gigit, because she was already doing Social Security law. Gigit's actually been doing it for 15 years. I got into it more because of Kennedy. Like so many in our profession, we want to help people because, like Allison said, we walk, you know, walk the walk and talk the talk, so to speak. So will Kennedy be eligible for SSI at 18? Yes, she will. She will not be able to hold a full-time job. So I cannot put anything in Kennedy's name, or I don't want to, right? I don't want to have any savings account in her name that's growing or getting larger. I want to make sure that if she does, you know, get a great gift or an inheritance from me or another family member, that it goes into a special needs trust. So that is what special needs planning is about, and that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So you can go on the next slide. So a lot of people are, you know, they hear named special needs trust. Sometimes they get wrapped up in exactly the wording of it. A trust is a great legal tool to create a separate entity from the beneficiary and to appoint someone else besides the disabled beneficiary to manage that trust property and to, you know, pay for certain things for that disabled beneficiary on their behalf. That is what a supplemental needs trust, that's why the funds in a supplemental needs trust is protected against that SSI resource test that Gigit mentioned. Supplemental needs trust versus special needs trust. I get that question asked a lot. Are they the same thing? Basically, yes. Under the POMS, the term supplemental needs trust is usually utilized for a third-party trust, which I'll get into in a minute. And then the term special needs trust is usually referred to as a first-party trust. But in the legal field, in the special needs world, and probably your world too, Allison, those names get kind of interchanged, and that's okay. Don't, you know, it's not all in the name. It's kind of how it's managed, and who funds it is what's important. You can go to the next slide. Okay, what do the words mean? Grantor is just someone that establishes the trust. Usually it is the parent of the disabled child. And then the trustee. For now, I get this question a lot. Can I just be trustee of my child's special needs trust? Yes, you can. You can be trustee and creator of that trust right now, but you definitely need appropriate alternates. And you know, a lot of the times I am creating what's called revocable third-party special needs trusts. And that means that you can amend it and update it throughout the child's life, because obviously you don't know when you're going to pass away. When you do pass away, that trust will become irrevocable. So you want to make sure you do have enough successor trustees or alternate trustees besides yourself. And maybe that aren't, 65 and up. You want people that are younger, have a more likelihood to survive you. But again, those trustee designations can be updated at any time. Even if it is irrevocable, there is a process to update those trustees. But I talk to my clients a lot about this specific designation. The trustee is important. There's a lot of different circumstances based on your family that we can talk about. And then, of course, the beneficiary in this case for special needs planning is the disabled person, whether it's a child or an adult. You can go to the next slide. And I think I mentioned this already, supplemental needs trust, aka special needs trust. It is for someone who meets the definition of disability. It is needed for someone that is receiving mean-based or income and resource-based benefits, public benefits. So people ask, well, my adult child is now on SSDI. They've switched over. Is there an income limit? Is there a resource limit? Can, what do I need to do to protect them? So really, as Gigit said, you can win the lottery, you can inherit $1 million, and your SSDI check will not be taken away, will not be reduced because of that inheritance. You qualify based on other eligibility. So do you need a third-party supplemental needs trust to protect inheritance if you're on SSDI? No. However, there are Medicaid programs that people want to apply for, and that is a income. As Allison mentioned, there's a lot of Medicaid programs in Texas, over 100, right? There's different eligibility requirements. Some, the income is low, but not extremely low, so you could qualify for that program. But you don't want to inherit too much still. So I like to say it's case by case. But in that scenario, I usually have people do what's called a revocable living trust with some supplemental needs language in there. That can be in a trust or a will, a revocable living trust or a will, so that in case, your adult child, you pass away, your adult child is receiving some type of income-based public benefit, in addition to SSDI, they can still qualify and not inherit too much.
So I think you hit the nail right on the head, but I think a lot of times what people hear around the water cooler is when my child switches over to SSI to SSDI, then it doesn't matter anymore how much money you have. And that is true as long as you don't care about Medicaid waivers, anything that goes along with any of those. And so there is a magic number, like an HCS income limit. It's 300% of SSI. So for 2025, that was 2901 for like the HCS waivers. And what I would say is, for the most part, a lot of the people that we talk to, you do want to keep them Medicaid eligible. Medicaid waivers is a whole nother ballgame, a whole nother discussion for another day. But some of these waiver budgets, depending on the level of need of the individual, could be in excess of $300,000 a year. And what I would say is that's not nothing. So if your child has big care needs, you probably do want to keep them eligible for those Medicaid waivers. It is a choice. It's not mandatory. It is a choice. And the waivers, it takes a very long time in Texas to get one, 17 to 20 years unless there's a crisis. But it could largely defray some of the out-of-pocket expense and some of the money that you need to leave to the special needs trust in the future if they do in fact get one. So it's worth considering before you make that decision.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, here are the various types of special needs trusts. And when I like to also say supplemental needs trust, because it actually is very indicative of what the trust does. It has to supplement the needs of the disabled beneficiary. It can't supplant or take the place of what SSI is supposed to pay for, right? We all know the SSI check is not enough to live on in today's age, right? but it is supposed to pay for housing cost, food, clothing, as Gidget mentioned. So definitely utilize that SSI check, pay for things, you have to pay for things for the beneficiary, has to only go to the disabled beneficiary. And then we get this question a lot. Well, okay, but what if I really don't need rent, right, from my child? Well, still pay it into your bank account, and then what you do with that money is completely up to you, right? If you then put it into their third-party supplemental needs trust as a savings, absolutely you can do that. You can reroute it back. So that's just a smart way to kind of continue to save for your child. So supplemental needs, that's basically goes to the management of the trust, and that's the trustee's job. The third party special needs trust or supplemental needs trust, that is funded by other people's money besides the disabled beneficiary. That is literally why it's called third party. It's other people's money. It is not the disabled beneficiary's money. That is why it's not counted against them. So grandparents, yes, can fund that trust. Parents, yes, can fund that trust. Friends. And when I say fund the trust, that means if you have a bank account in the name of the trust, they can write a check absolutely to that bank account. That child can inherit. Don't disinherit children that really need the extra funds. Instead of listing them on a beneficiary designation, you list their third-party special needs trust. The third-party pooled S&T, pooled trust I'll get into a little bit later, but the only real difference of that is that the trustee is a nonprofit organization. So if you don't have someone that can step in and handle these trusts, then there are a lot of organizations out there that will help. First party. So again, third party was other people's money. First party is the disabled beneficiary's money. You do have to create, or it is not able to be created for people that are older than 65 right now. But if the disabled beneficiary is under the age of 65 and receives an inheritance, and you panic because it wasn't sent to a third party trust, it was sent to them personally through a will or through a retirement fund. Someone died and just gave it to that disabled beneficiary. People panic and say, what should we do? Gidget and I will say right now, do not gift it away. That is worse. Don't just panic and put it somewhere else, right? Or cash it out or whatever you think that you're doing to make sure they don't lose Medicaid. You absolutely need to contact an attorney, or if you already have a first party trust established, you need to safeguard those funds into a first party trust. And once it's in there, yes, you will get penalized for that month, but you will be eligible the very next month. Because as Gidget mentioned, it's a snapshot, monthly income resource test.
I would just like to mention, so if you're taking notes here, guys, check your beneficiaries. Check all of your beneficiaries. It's very, very
Absolutely.
common. It's very, very common to where we name our spouse as a beneficiary and then we divide it equally amongst our kids. If our spouse is already dead and gone. So not naming these kids directly as the beneficiary in anything you have, old pension plans, old 401ks, 403bs, life insurance, you name it, we don't want to do that. But what I want to challenge you here is have intentional conversations with parents and grandparents, because sometimes our parents and our grandparents, they keep their cards close to their chest and they don't always tell what they're doing. So you don't have to assume that they're going to give money, but you just need to let them know they want to do things the right way. Their advisor is not likely nuanced with special needs, and they need to be told not how to leave the assets properly to the special needs trust for the benefit of said child, as opposed to leaving it directly. And it will avoid the last minute, I need a first party special needs trust with a Medicaid payback. So be intentional, have those conversations. And we even have some wording on that. I know sometimes it's dicey with the family that doesn't want to talk about that, talk about death, talk about money or anything like that. But it's saying, hey, I'm assuming nothing. But I sat on a webinar the other day and I learned that there's a right way and a wrong way to leave money to little Johnny. And here's the right way to do it. And here's the action steps that I've taken to set up a special needs trust for Johnny. And I just wanted to pass that along, and they will definitely appreciate that.
Yes, thank you, Allison. And I do want to mention also life insurance policies don't always go to your estate. So we have had a case where the father believed that the life insurance policy would just go through his estate, and he had special needs trust language in his will. That was not the case. The life insurance policy company said our policy is to give it outright to his heirs, to his children. Well, he had 3. He really truly wanted that life insurance policy to only go to his disabled daughter. No matter what, it had to be split in 3s. There was nothing we could do to go around it. And the disabled daughter needed a first party trust. So he had done a lot of planning in order for that not to happen, but he didn't realize the life insurance policy's terms and conditions, right? A lot of us don't. We don't read that fine print. And that was their policy. So that was a very good lesson for us. And I almost always talk about that in my estate planning meetings, because just like you said, Allison, I go through, where can you update all of your beneficiary designations? I go through all of their assets and their accounts and everything, and I say, okay, you do have a few life insurance policies. Please understand these rules.
So yes, to that point, we see that all the time, because I think what happens is people think when they do their legal documents that it trumps everything, and it does not trump beneficiary designations on anything you have, bank accounts,
Nope.
life insurance, 401ks, 403bs. And that is so important. So there's one more step, like after you get these legal documents in place, is getting those change of beneficiaries done and checking that off the list. Some firms help you do that, but the change of beneficiary forms are easily requested for free. They're easily processed for free. You can do it for free. You just got to request it from, employers. It's going to be the HR department, and then any individual companies for life insurance, bank accounts and stuff, they'll all have their own beneficiary forms, but that is really, really important.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that as well, because I've literally had parents say, well, if I put the life insurance policy and the account number and all of that on my schedule, right, of my trust, and I have a trust, isn't that enough? And I promise you that is not a dumb question, that we get that all the time. It's not enough to just sign a trust agreement. You have to then title things in the trust or pay on death to that trust, and pay on death are those beneficiary designations. So I go through that a lot, specifically with clients on how to do that. Because you're absolutely right, Allison, just because you've signed these papers, that your job doesn't stop there. You have to take it a step farther. So I think we're on to benefits of the third party special needs trust. Yes, so the third party special needs trust, the one that I really encourage parents who have disabled children to set up now, is because it's good for inheritance, right? We already mentioned that. And there is no payback requirement to Medicaid. So the biggest difference, as far as what happens when the disabled beneficiary passes, is that the funds in a third party trust can have contingent beneficiaries. So you can have your other children or siblings or whoever, inherit if your disabled child passes. So there is no, I have to repay Medicaid. And people ask me that too. Well, what is the amount of Medicaid? That is case by case, but with a first party trust, it's a Medicaid payback trust, which means that when the disabled beneficiary passes away, that, however much money Medicaid is paid out to that child over their lifetime, they get to claw it back. And, if there's a lot in there, that's just something that you don't want to happen, right? You want to be able to pass those funds on to someone else, a charity even, or their siblings. Especially if there's a lot of funds in there. So we try to avoid Medicaid clawback trusts, and the benefits of the third party special needs trust is exactly that. That's probably the number one benefit, besides or next to saving public benefits.
Just wanted to say that not all states have a Medicaid payback on the first party special needs trust. Texas
Right.
specifically does. And then some people say that, Texas also has a Medicaid payback on an ABLE account, right? So people want to know, if I get my trust or my ABLE account in a different state, do I avoid that Medicaid payback? And the answer is no. It's where you are a resident of. So that is always a good valid question, because you can have an ABLE account from anywhere, right? But if you live in a state where there is a state Medicaid payback, then that state Medicaid payback would still be applicable to those accounts. So we did verify that because it
Wow.
comes up a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So another important thing to understand about a third-party special needs trust is, like I mentioned, picking a good trustee, because the disbursements from that trust are important. You cannot, make cash disbursements straight to the beneficiary. The beneficiary cannot have any control, or the disabled beneficiary cannot have any control or say on what happens to those funds. And I say that loosely, say if that disabled beneficiary is verbal and can communicate their wants, of course they can talk with their trustee, but they can't have full control. That's the main thing. And dictate the trustee. They cannot appoint their own trustee or be their own trustee of this trust. It has to really, really look separate. That is why it protects them from losing their public benefits. So trustee, we go through this a lot with clients, picking the best trustee. I know it's difficult. I know that to trust someone with that amount of money when you pass, to care for your disabled beneficiary is a lot. And so that is one thing that I love to personally get involved with my clients in and go through that with them, because it is a personal decision. There are alternatives to family members serving. There are corporate trustees if the trust is going to be large enough eventually. And also that nonprofit is a pooled trust, which I think I get into later. But essentially the management of the third party trust, it has to go towards things. So the trustee actually has to pay things for the disabled beneficiary on their behalf. They cannot just give outright funds to the disabled beneficiary, like into their account, because then that's going to knock the trust from being a true third party trust. So we go through that as well. We help clients with management of those third party trusts. Okay, so the next one is the first party payback trust. I think we've already talked about that. That is essentially kind of always kind of like, oops, we didn't plan. It's because someone has inherited outright and they need to now create a first party, which we help with. It is an irrevocable trust. It has to be. And it is for those circumstances where someone has inherited, they don't want to get kicked off their benefits, but they will get penalized for that month. Now, most likely, as Gigit will say, Social Security and Medicaid won't catch on until later, but you may get deducted for that month. But as long as you transfer it out into a first party trust and report it, then you're still eligible the next month.
Carly, we have just about 3 minutes left, and we put a lot of slides today in, and we're going to send the slides to everybody. We knew we weren't going to get through all of them, but I want to go through go to the one that makes the most sense for us to end on today. So you let me know.
Yeah, so pooled trust, the ARC of Texas is a great master pooled trust scenario. It's a nonprofit, less fees. Definitely look into it. They have great customer service. They can explain a lot about what a pooled trust is. The next slide, these are just examples of the benefits of utilizing that special needs trust, but I feel like I've touched on that quite a bit. So, but definitely read these examples. And the last slide is about that ABLE account. And huge proponent of ABLE, but I get that question a lot. Do I need an ABLE account? I have a special needs trust. Yes, I think those two go hand in hand. And just to make it short and simple, third party special needs trust for inheritance, ABLE account for day-to-day savings living. ABLE account does have more restrictions. It maxes out at 100,000, so not a good inheritance type trust to put funds in. But the ABLE account can pay for so much more than the special needs trust can pay for. It can pay for housing. It can bridge the gap with some of those rents that are really high. And you can contribute up to, I think it's 20,000 in 2026. I think they're going up to 20,000 in 2026. Is that right?
19,000 for 2025, and the contributions do need to be in by December 31st. But one big distinguishing factor between the ABLE account and the special needs trust I wanted to mention, Carly, is you cannot make an ABLE account a beneficiary on a life insurance contract, where you could On a life
Oh, right.
insurance contract, you could make your special needs trust a beneficiary. But you can't do that for an ABLE account, and they do go together beautifully. You can pay for shelter out of an ABLE account without a 1/3 reduction to SSI. So that is another reason. And guys, we have entire presentations on ABLE accounts and if you should or should not open an ABLE account on the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel. So you'll want to check that out. And we are opening ABLE accounts for people on or before December 12th, and then after December 12th, it'll be after the first of the year, and we'll pick back up. So if you're wanting that, we actually have ABLE appointments that you can schedule now. So I know that you guys are state specific for Texas. I know that we serve people all across the United States, and we have people from out of state today. If you're wondering, how do you find appropriate attorneys for the stuff that you're on in your area, if you are out of state, you can look at the National Association of Elder Law Attorneys. You can also look at the Special Needs Planning Academy, and you will generally find some qualified attorneys in your area. I've also found that a lot of the special needs parent groups on Facebook, usually those attorneys that are specifically nuanced in that in your area will keep bubbling up. The same names will keep bubbling up. You'll see those. So I just wanted to mention that. So guys, we're out of time for today. We're going to send you guys a copy of the slides and a link to the recording. It'll have a link for any of our upcoming webinars that we have coming in the future that you can register for. We work on a collaborative team here at CPG, and we stand ready to help you plan for the future. We know that webinars like this are a little overwhelming. We know that it's a lot of information packed in a short period of time. That's why we send the slides, and that's why we send the recording. But if you need more help, reach out. Schedule with Tyler and Maderer. Schedule with us. We offer free personalized consultations to have a better understanding of what your needs are. And I would like you to end when somebody's hiring you to file the appeal or whatever they need. How do you work? I understand that the Social Security Administration caps how much you can get paid. So Gigit, could you end on that? And then Carly, could you just give us a range of setting up documents? I know it is a range and I know it's attorney specific, but if you guys could just give us a financial clue on that, that would be great.
Right. First, I want to clarify for Social Security, Disability, and SSI, I can practice anywhere in the United States. It's federal. So if you are in another state, I can help specifically with those issues. I work on a contingency fee basis. There's no upfront fees or cost to you. If we win the case, we get 25% of the back pay, those back due benefits while they made you wait, up to a cap of $9,200. It's the lower of the two. That cap is set by the federal government. My fees are completely regulated by the Social Security Administration, and they pay me directly from your back due benefits.
Yes, and if you mention this webinar, you can get on my schedule and have a free consultation. Special needs planning ranges anywhere from 2,500 to up to 4,000 usually for our packages. Depends on what all you need and your specific family situation.
For sure. All right. Thank you for sharing that. For indigent families, wherever you are in the country, you can Google legal aid, and the legal aid associations will pop up for your area, for your county. There is also disability rights, and they usually throw the state name after disability rights. So for Texas, it's Disability Rights Texas, and sometimes there's financial assistance for indigent households and that way as well. Well, you guys were awesome as usual. Thanks for taking the time to be here with us today. And our audience was awesome. We had so many wonderful questions. If we didn't get to your question today, reach out to us directly and we'll help you any way that we can. And we will look forward to partnering with the two of you again soon. Thanks so much, guys.
All right, thank
Have a
you.
great
Thanks,
afternoon.
Allison. Bye.
Bye now.